Welcome to VikeFans.com's exclusive series, Jay's All-Out-Blitz. A look inside the key challenges and issues facing NFL players and the Minnesota Vikings in 2013. And now your host, Tom Moore, and former NFL linebacker, Jay Foreman.
Welcome, everyone, to our September 26th edition of Jay Foreman's All-Out-Blitz series. I'm Tom Moore, and I'm joined by former NFL linebacker Jay Foreman. Well, Jay, as much as everyone expected the Vikings to dominate the Cleveland Browns on Sunday, after the first Minnesota offensive series, it really went sideways for the Purple, and we saw breakdowns happen on both sides of the ball, and the Vikings again failed to hold a lead at the end of the game. As our football doctor, what do the Vikings have to do to fix this so that they get going things the right way in 2013?
Oh, man, that's a good question. I think every position group is taking their turn at, letting the team down. So I think really it just needs to be a holistic fix. I think the offense and defense need to play off each other, and the special teams needs to step up their game as well. The offensive line, for whatever reason, they're not as crisp in their blocking schemes this year, and then also they're not protecting as well as they did last year. And then you couple that with a quarterback that's confidence is shaky at best. It's a recipe for disaster. It's a recipe to where you can't hold the leading games, because regardless of how bad the Cleveland Browns have been for the last 15 or 20 years, the NFL is set up with all this parity is that the more chance that you give a team like Cleveland to score, to move the ball, to kick field goals, to stay within striking distance of the game, they're going to do it. And to be honest with you, even though they had 3 picks on defense, Hoyer really picked the defensive secondary apart. So Cleveland did a pretty good job of blocking our vaunted front four at the Vikings. So I think that every group has taken their turn of not playing their best. And so hopefully being over as far as they can be away from the Viking Stadium over there when they play Pittsburgh, another team that's struggling. They come out with a victory and go into a bye week and can really turn around the season. I'm hoping and I'm also expecting that they play a lot better this week over there in London.
Well, when you're a quarterback like Ponder, he's had trouble with accuracy. How much of that is caused by an offensive line? When it's breaking down like that, does it really get in his mind to where it makes it difficult, even when he's got a clear path, to throw accurately?
A little bit. You can definitely see that he's gunshot or snake bit, however you want to describe it. He can get in their head. He hasn't been hit a lot. I think guys have just gotten into his face. So obviously the passing lanes aren't just as open as they appear in practice. But you know what? Every great NFL quarterback has to deal with it. Every young quarterback has to deal with it. He's been in Minnesota long enough to where he should be used to it. And to be honest with you, he just flat out needs to perform better. He has the talent. He has the arm. He has the group around him that's up there with anybody in the NFC. When you have Adrian Peterson, Jennings, Rudolph at tight end, you expect bigger things. I mean, he scored 2 touchdowns running last week, but we need to see him to have that 2 to 3 touchdowns game and be able to march the team down. I just haven't seen it yet. It's something I think that has boiled over since preseason, and he just hasn't gotten it right yet.
Well, an 0-3 start is not completely foreign to you, because I know when you were with the Buffalo Bills in 2001, your team started 0-3. In fact, they went 0-4. What are the likely emotions and confidence levels of the players and coaches right now on the Viking team?
Like I said, it's very shaky. Players are out there trying their hardest, obviously, and wanting to do well, but when you're losing every game, regardless if you're losing them in the late fashion or getting blown out, a loss is a loss. And the NFL losses mean so much because you put so much into every game, and you only get 16 games. When you lose 3 or 4 in a row, you forgot what it's like to win. And when you start the season 0-3 or 0-4 like I did in 2001 with the Buffalo Bills, you don't have anything to draw back on because you forgot what you did last year. And then this year you're 0-3 and 0-4. It's very, very hard to kick that habit. You just have to be able to keep fighting, because sooner or later you're going to break through. And you'd like to think once you break through one, the wins are going to start piling on once you start getting some confidence and good luck going on your side.
Well, I know the Vikings are fighting NFL history as only 5 teams have recovered from an 0-3 start to make the playoffs. And based on that, at what point do you think the Vikings should start inserting some of the younger players like a Mike Mowdy at linebacker or a Cordarrelle Patterson getting more frequent touches on offense, or even putting backup quarterback Matt Castle in the lineup to light a fire into the offense?
I wouldn't put the backup linebackers in too quick because they're still evaluating what they have in Aaron Henderson. And then obviously you got Chad Greenway, who's a perennial All-Pro. I think that as far as the quarterback position, that is something that, regardless of the record, It's going to come down to how Christian Ponder performs in these next 2 to 3 games. If he is still not playing up to standard, not playing up to the type of quarterback that can take a team to the playoffs, regardless of your record, what it is right now, then you're going to see some people calling for Capsule to come in because everybody loves a backup quarterback. He has the best job in the league, but that's the position I might see some change coming in the future, depending on how Christian Ponder plays.
And if you put in a Matt Castle, let's say it's the 5th or 6th game, and he comes in, and then he doesn't perform well, does that help a Christian Ponder if he comes back in and plays, or does that hurt him by taking him out at this point?
It just depends on the individual. Sometimes, when you get pulled for a game, and then you're in the next week, it's a shock to the system. It's a wake-up call. And then some guys go in the tank. So I really don't know Christian Ponder personally or as a player. I'd like to think if he got pulled, say, in the second half of a game, that once he got back in, he'd play a lot better. And, sometimes the quarterback position and their play is predicated on circumstance, down the distance, or the game, how the offensive line is, how they're running the ball. All that has to go into factoring in to see who plays and who doesn't play. And to the credit of the Minnesota Vikings administration and their coaching staff, they've been very patient and have always taken a step back before they made any hasty decisions. So as long as Christian Ponder can step his game up and be part of the solution and not part of the problem, I don't foresee him taking him out.
Well, a lot of fans are pointing at offensive coordinator Bill Musgrave's unwillingness to open up the offense as a reason for the team's struggles, and many are calling for him to be removed in the middle of a season. If the Vikings were to consider such a move, what are the challenges of going outside the organization for a new offensive coordinator in the middle of a season?
If they go outside, that'd be very, very hard because essentially he doesn't have the playbook. What they would probably do is promote somebody within, kind of on an intern basis. So everybody saw what the Baltimore Ravens did last year with Cam Cameron, and then Caldwell stepping in, and they obviously went on and went to the Super Bowl and started performing better offensively. But if you remember the first 2 weeks that Caldwell became the OC, they got beat up pretty bad. They got blown out by Houston. Then after they got a little payback there in the playoffs. But, it's a touchy situation because you never know what's going on inside of those meetings. Or is it a whole decision for them to take back the reins off of Christian Ponder? Is there a physical ailment with Christian Ponder that's not allowing him to be successful as a quarterback? Or do they just not have enough confidence in him to where they want him to be more of a game manager and just hand the ball off to AP and make a couple first downs per half and not lose the game? You don't know what their whole offensive philosophy is, but if they do remove Bill Musgrave, that will tell you a lot what's going to happen in the future. Everybody will be on notice, per se, which is out to Christian Ponder for his job. Guys that are shaky that haven't been playing well, they are on a however many game basis to show the Vikings that they can play.
Well, this week the Vikings welcome back Pro Bowl fullback Jerome Felton. And to make room for him on the roster, the Vikings placed rookie Zach Line on season-ending injured reserve. And Line seemed to have a minor knee injury at the end of the Browns game. And I wanted to ask you, Jay, if you thought the move was a means of avoiding exposing Line to the waiver wire and losing him to another team.
Almost definitely. I mean, guys do that. You hear the stories about guys having an ankle injury or be on the injured reserve where they can, hide guys from other teams. It's because there's only 53 spots on a roster. You can put a guy on injured reserve. You can have him in meetings. You can have him train. He just won't be out there to play. So you're going to rehab him, whatever ailment that he has. So, yeah, I think they like him. A lot of teams won't put you on injured reserve. They'll probably waive you injured and just pay you an injury settlement for however many weeks that you're hurt. So I think that tells you what they think about him and where they look at him in the future. And maybe next year they'll be able to keep 2 fullbacks moving forward, or they might just make a salary cap move in and cut Jerome, and then they're just start fullbacks for the future. So that tells you a lot what they think about him, and then also what their plans are for him moving forward.
Well, for the fans watching on Sunday, what are the signs people can look for to see if players have lost confidence in the Viking coaching staff?
If that is the case, you'll see a lack of effort. You'll see some sideline skirmishes or arguments. NFL players these days aren't like the NFL players back when my dad played, or even when I played for a year. Always taught and always acted as if the coach was the superior. You didn't really say anything negative about the coaches. These guys make enough money to where they're going to voice their opinion. I don't really think that's the case. I think the players, top to bottom, have a tremendous amount of respect for Leslie Frazier and his coaching staff. I think they realize that they're going through a dry spell right now, and they have to fight their way out of it. And I know they had high expectations at the beginning of the season just because they went to the playoffs last year. Adrian Peterson was the NFL MVP. You would think that with Greg Jennings coming in, with that defense that plays pretty good and has been playing good for years, that they would be even more equipped to make a deep playoff run. And then when you start off 0-3, sometimes it hits you in the stomach, and so therefore you got to build up enough strength to punch back.
Well, you and I agree on the fact that it might be the best thing in the world for the Vikings to be having a home game in London's Wembley Stadium this weekend. But what are the pitfalls of playing a game overseas like that?
Well, it's the jet lag. It's the being in another country. You want to do a lot of sightseeing. I imagine a lot of players and wives and families that came over, so then therefore the intensity of the week as you prepare isn't as intense as it usually is when you preparing at home or preparing to go for a away game. This is almost like a vacation. It's almost like a bowl game if you want to equate it to something as analogy-wise on football and college football. So those are all the negatives. You know, the nightlife, guys don't know the places to go or where not to go. Something can happen off the field. But if you have a good leadership with your head coach, good veteran leadership with the players, and they have it with Jared Allen, Chad Greenway, and all those guys, I don't foresee anything happening for the Vikings. I just expect them to play a lot better. And I think that Cleveland Brown loss was a wake-up call to them. I think maybe with the third-team quarterback starting for Cleveland, and they necessarily didn't take him as seriously as they could have, but then also they didn't have a lot of tape on him. So I think he caught them by surprise. With Pittsburgh, you know what they are. They're struggling themselves. I look for the Vikings to play a lot better this week.
Well, it's interesting because Leslie Frazier took a different approach than Mike Tomlin of the Steelers did. The Steelers don't fly out until tomorrow. The Vikings left on Monday. Which is likely the better strategy, or are they just differences of opinion?
I think that the better strategy is to get over there, try to get it acclimated as much as possible, get used to the time change, get used to the food, get used to the people, kind of get in the same routine. I look at it like this. If I'm going to fight with a boxer, I want to take my hardest punches at the beginning of the fight and be able to recover later on. So if Pittsburgh leaving a little bit later, their jet lag is going to hit them right around game time, unless they've changed their practice schedule to kind of simulate what it's like over there in London. So it'll be very, very interesting to see who starts fast and who's going to be able to finish stronger. That's going to tell you to win the game, because both the teams are pretty even.
Turning our attention elsewhere in the NFL, Denver Broncos linebacker Vaughan Miller has been suspended for 4 games for a failed drug test. But we found out this week that the failure was due to either a spilled urine sample or a diluted sample. And I'm curious from your perspective, Jay, can you tell the listeners what the in-season drug testing process is for the NFL? How often does it occur, and how much notice do you get before a test actually does occur?
They give you 24 to 48 hours when you're in season. That means they'll be on site. They usually get you, I imagine, anywhere from Monday through Friday. I think when I was in the NFL, that was league rules. So it's a very simple process. They put a letter in your locker or in your stool at your locker, and they explain that your name has been picked for whether it's street drug or a steroid test. And this is the time that they're going to be tested, and the tester will be on site. He has the names, he has the players. He checks your medical records with the team just in case they prescribed you any cough medicine or anything like that. So therefore, if it shows up in your urine, you know you're not taking any type of performance-enhancing drugs. He follows you into the bathroom. You drop your garments, and then he watches you fill the cup where they seal it with a number on it, and you verify that is the same number. And it's done. Some guys have tried different things to dilute it, where you have been taking too much water or done stuff to your kidneys to try to clear out the bad stuff. But they have the tests that are so accurate now that they obviously find out when it's diluted. It's a black eye for Vaughan Miller and the Broncos, and obviously the league, is because the league is trying to do the right thing and obviously keep guys as clean as possible to make the playing field even. But some guys have things going on outside the field, which is no different than the real world. And then you just got to deal with it. And hopefully Vaughan Miller, he's a great young pass rusher from what I've seen, and right about him, he's a great young man. He has stuff going on outside of football. He hopes this drug test is a wake-up call to him, because he doesn't want to be known for this, and therefore he needs to take it very seriously, rehab his body, his mind, and obviously rehab his image, and hopefully never hear about it again.
Well, out on the West Coast, San Francisco just dropped their second game in a row with a blowout loss to the Colts at Candlestick Park. After the game, running back Frank Gore seemed to target some angry words towards head coach Jim Harbaugh because Gore only got 14 touches in the game. Do you think there's unrest in 49er land after 2 losses?
with where they were last year, obviously losing in the Super Bowl and losing on essentially the last play, there's a lot of expectation. You have a veteran team. Frank Gore is getting up there a little bit long in the tooth. He realizes his tenure in the NFL is slowly but surely coming to an end. But he is their best running back. He is one of their best weapons. I think that what the frustration that he is voicing is that essentially since Colin Kaepernick is the named the starter, he doesn't want to be forgotten about because that's what made Alex Smith and Colin Kaepernick so good with Frank Gore in the running attack. He is the person that can easily post the field 25 times a game, 30, 35 times if you need him to. And he hasn't been used all year. The running attack was very successful last week, but they just went away from it very quickly. And I'm sure Frank is an ultimate competitor. I played with him 1 year. He's a very, very competitive person. And so for him to be frustrated is pretty much quite naturally. And I look for Jim Harbaugh, who is a player's coach. He's been an NFL player. He's a successful quarterback himself, to take that into account and really get the team going back in the right direction. Because they've had a pretty tough schedule. These first 3 games, they're playing 3 playoff teams, so to be 1-2 isn't all that bad for them, even though they wish they were 2-1.
In the AFC, there are actually 4 teams right now who have undefeated records at 3-0. You've got New England, Miami, Kansas City, and Denver. Of that group, Jay, which one impresses you the most?
To be honest with you, I'd say a tie between the Dolphins and the Chiefs. The Dolphins are more of a surprise 3-0. Through the preseason, they look more like a ragtag a team where they had a lot of talent, had a big offseason splash by signing a lot of guys, spending a lot of money, but they didn't look like a team in the preseason. Ryan Tannehill has stepped his game up, not just 1 step, but 2 or 3 steps. So they've been very impressive, and their defense is young, they're aggressive and athletic, and they're going to be a team to be reckoned with, not only for this year, but for a couple years in the future. Now, with Kansas City, for them to be 3-0 and only winning 2 games last year, to some people it would be a surprise, but to me not, because they had 6 Pro Bowlers last year. So they had the talent. With Andy Reid coming in, with Alex Smith manning the controls as a quarterback, really being that calming force that they needed on the offensive side of the ball, they are very impressive because they're going to be the type of team as they get going and get more wins and get more confident, they're going to get even better. They're a very, very dangerous team barring injury that can really make some noise, even against the Denver Broncos and Peyton Manning. And I'm excited to see when those 2 teams lock horns to see who comes out on the wing in.
Well, much like you said at the beginning of the season, you talk about those 3 teams, but New England is sitting here at 3-0 like you said they were. They continue to be the team to beat.
Yeah, New England they're going to be there every year. They have a blueprint for success. They're not going to go away from it until it doesn't work, and it hasn't not worked in over 10 to 12 years. So then, therefore, it's going to be interesting to see if Miami can step up and beat them. But as long as you have Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, and their defense over the last couple of years has been taking some punches. But as you see now, they're starting to know the system. They're starting to play a lot better defense. And you can see the team transitioning into a defensive-led team until Tom Brady gets more weapons around him, or better yet, the weapons that he has develop. So I'm really excited to see how the Patriots end up this season because their 2 top running backs are injured. And so when they come back, I think their passing attack is going to be even better. Let's not forget, Gronkowski's going to be coming back here any week now, and he's the best tight end in the business when he's healthy.
Well, that brings a close to another edition of Jay Foreman's All-Out Blitz. And next week is a bye week for the Vikings, so Jay will return on October 3rd to give his views on the Vikings and the rest of the NFL. So until then, I'm Tom Moore.
And I'm Jay Foreman.
See you soon.